वो दिन भी क्या दिन थे. And in English, you say, those were the best days of my life. Hello, how are you? This is Heena from Team Vallath, and you might be thinking, what happened to Heena? Why has she started the lecture like this today? Let me tell you. Very recently, we have started with this WhatsApp group in which all the students of our school from my batch are getting connected. And I realized that I did not miss my childhood so much until I met these people from my childhood. Wow! So, the moral of the story is that love the ones you love a little more dearly today. Praise the ones whom you really appreciate a little more dearly today, because tomorrow might be late, or we can say tomorrow never comes, not physically. You will have very long ages, but maybe philosophically, psychologically, just carpe diem. Make the most of the day, right? Come on now, let's start with today's lecture without wasting any time. You all know the book that I'm following is our from Vallath. It is Literary Master Reference Book. And what topic have I chosen from this book today? Sequels in British literature. First of all, tell me, what is a sequel? I know you know it, but then you should know the proper definition. A sequel is a literary work that continues the story of an earlier text, or a sequel is a literary work that continues the characters or themes of an earlier text, right? In English literature, there have been very famous novels to which sequels have been written by either the same novelist or by some other author. The most famous ones we will discuss today. Are you ready? I know you are. Let's start with the first slide here. Euphues and His England. This very famous prose romance written by John Lyly, published in the year 1580, was a sequel to? This is a question I'm asking you. Euphues and His England is a sequel to? Euphues, The Anatomy of Wit. Euphues, The Anatomy of Wit was published in 1578, whereas Euphues and His England was published in the year 1580. You should know Euphues is a Greek term which literally means graceful and witty. Both these books, they are prose romances, or you can say early prose novels of British literature. The style of these novels actually gave rise to the term Euphuism. So if the question comes that who gave birth to Euphuism, you have to write John Lyly. Which books are connected with Euphuism? They are Euphues, The Anatomy of Wit, and Euphues and His England. And also a very famous proverb in English which goes like this: all is fair in love and war, has been attributed to Lyly's Euphues. Will you remember? I know you will. You will. Look at the picture. You will learn a little more. You will remember a little more, because images always help better to retain what we want to learn. Euphues. Euphuism is this ornate style of writing. You should know this. Okay? It's connected to beauty in literature. Let's move on to the next slide. Question. Locksley Hall 60 years after is a sequel to? The answer is Locksley Hall. So easy. Locksley Hall and Locksley Hall 60 years after was written by A.L. Tennyson, or Alfred Lord Tennyson. Locksley Hall came in the year 1842, whereas Locksley Hall 60 years after came in 1886. These are poems, and you should know the sequel, that is 60 years after, is more pessimistic. Why? Because the original work, that is Locksley Hall, in the original work, in the first work, Locksley Hall, the speaker is young, romantic, although he's rejected in love, but he is optimistic about science, about future. A very famous line, in fact, from Locksley Hall of 1842 is, forward, forward, let us range. But on the contrary, in the sequel, that is Locksley Hall 60 years after of 1886, this speaker has become old. And rather than showing his optimism, he has now become pessimist, or you can say he's acting cynical about society. He sees progress as nothing but spiritual decline. Okay, so this is Locksley Hall sequel, Locksley Hall 60 years after, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Will you remember? Of course you will. You have no choice. Let's move on to the third slide of the day. Nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. You might see where is nowhere written here. Come on, turn air horn backward. Read air horn backward. It becomes nowhere. Listen to the question. Erewhon Revisited of 1901 was written by Samuel Butler. Please tell me the sequel to Erewhon Revisited of 1901. I try to ask questions. I try to frame the questions from the slides which are right in front of your eyes, because question answer is a better way of learning rather than a simple lecture way, right? So tell me, Erewhon Revisited is the sequel to Erewhon or Over the Range. Okay, come now, listen. Erewhon or Over the Range was written in the year 1872 by Samuel Butler. This first novel, Erewhon or Over the Range, is a satire on Victorian society, or you can say Erewhon is a Victorian anti-utopia. It is set in a fictional country which was discovered by the protagonist. And this is the earliest novel in English literature which talks about artificial intelligence, because the Erewhonians, or the people, the citizens of Erewhon, are very scared of machines. They try to destroy the machines. They believe in the natural selection of Charles Darwin. AI, not the proper term has been used, but then yes, the ideas of AI in English literature were initially explored in Erewhon or Over the Range. And a very important question that has actually appeared in net. In Erewhon, illness is crime and crime is illness. So whoever is physically ill is detained in Erewhon, in this country that was discovered by the protagonist. Now let's talk about the sequel. Erewhon Revisited of 1901. The complete title of this sequel is Erewhon Revisited 20 years later, both by the original discoverer of the country and by his son. This sequel was published in the year 1901. And what happens in this sequel? The narrator returns to Erewhon and he finds out that he's now worshipped as a godlike figure. He's become a deity all of a sudden. And therefore, this sequel mocks religion. You can say that Erewhon, the original novel, mocks society, but the sequel Revisited mocks religion. Easy. And as I told you, Erewhon read backward is nowhere. Let's move on with Women in Love of 1920. Tell me, which novel of D.H. Lawrence was banned for obscenity? Women in Love, published in 1920. Women in Love is the sequel to The Rainbow of 1915. Both the novels talk about Brangwen family, the generation of Brangwens. Okay, initially in the first novel, The Rainbow, Brangwen generation, whereas Women in Love concentrates on Brangwen's sisters, Gudrun and Ursula. Will you remember? You will. So Women in Love of 1920 is the sequel to The Rainbow of 1915. The creator of these novels is D.H. Lawrence, and Women in Love talks about Brangwen sisters. Okay, both the novel talk about Brangwens. Easy. Can we move on? Yes, we can. Look at Virginia Woolf on the screen. A prominent member of the Bloomsbury group, a beacon of modernism. Virginia Woolf is here. Her work 3 Guineas of 1938 is a sequel to A Room of One's Own of 1929. So 3 Guineas of 1938 is a sequel to A Room of One's Own of 1929. These are very famous essays of Virginia Woolf that of course are connected with feminism. That was the prime topic that Virginia chose as her subject matter. We know A Room of One's Own talks about how a room of one's own and how money is required by any woman to write fiction. Whereas in 3 Guineas, the 3 Guineas are symbolic donations to, what do they donate? Donate kya hota hai? Denote. Donation. Denote. What these 3 Guineas denote in the essay of Virginia Woolf? First, women's education. Second, women's professional independence. And third, anti-war cause. Military. Okay. A question has come. Okay, in 3 Guineas, what does Virginia Woolf talk about? So the option was military. It was written somewhere military and education. So that was the correct option. Will you remember? You will. Now, look at this completely dedicated slide again. These are works by Hilary Mantel. Hilary Mantel is the first woman to win the Booker Prize twice. Please remember, which British literature writer, woman writer, was the first one to win the Booker Prize twice? The answer has to be Hilary Mantel. Okay? Hilary Mantel's 2012 novel, Bring Up the Bodies, is a sequel to Wolf Hall of 2009. Actually, these novels are a part of Thomas Cromwell trilogy. So now let me break it down easily for you. Thomas Cromwell trilogy was written by Hilary Mantel. The three novels that form the Thomas Cromwell trilogy are: first, Wolf Hall of 2009. Second, Bring Up the Bodies of 2012. And third, The Mirror and the Light of 2020. So Bring Up the Bodies of 2012 is the sequel to Wolf Hall of 2009. Wow, that's easy. That's easy. The photo that I have brought here is actually the stage adaptation photo. It's not the front, the book cover of the book. No, it's like the stage adaptation image. Okay, I liked it, so I brought it here. Let's move on now. Now, this is important. Listen. The question that have appeared, that has come in net. White Sargasso Sea is a post-colonial prequel to which novel? Sequel is what comes after. Prequel is which you talk about, like there's a novel, you want to talk about what happened before this novel. That becomes a prequel. So White Sargasso Sea, that was written by Jean Rhys, is a post-colonial prequel to which novel? The correct answer is Jane Eyre of 1847, written by Charlotte Bronte. Here, the authors have changed. Remember, Jane Eyre was written by Charlotte Bronte in the year 1847, whereas White Sargasso Sea was written by Jean Rhys in 1966, and White Sargasso Sea is a prequel to Jane Eyre. Why? Because both the novels focus on Bertha Mason. So Bertha Mason appears in both these novels, Jane Eyre and White Sargasso Sea. Of course, White Sargasso Sea is a post-colonial writing, and it's also called a counter-narrative. Okay? Easy. Very, very easy. Now, question. Paradise Regained is a sequel to Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost was published in 1667. Paradise Regained was published in 1671. Who wrote these? Of course, John Milton. And the last question of the day is, Through the Looking Glass is a sequel to? Through the Looking Glass is the sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Yes, the complete title of Through the Looking Glass is Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. This novel was published in the year 1871, and it was a sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which was published in 1865. The creator of these Alice's lovely stories is Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll, and we are done for the day. I hope you enjoyed the lecture and you had a lot to carry with you. If you want to order this book, you have to visit our website, vallathbooks.in, or you can call us on 93878 and we are always ready to help. This is Heena from Team Vallath. Take very good care of yourself. Okay, tata, bye-bye.